Most people don't consciously choose a victim mindset. It forms quietly over time as a way to survive. And one of the easiest places to see it is money. Not because money is the issue, but because money becomes a stage where power, worth, effort, and loss all get acted out. So in this video, I want to talk about the victim archetype, how it forms, how it sneaks into your money patterns, and why it can keep you stuck in a rut even when you know better. And then I want to show you how to pull yourself out of it, not through force or motivation, but by understanding why victimhood can actually feel weirdly good. Because it does, it's comforting, it's familiar, it's kind of delicious. And if you stay with me until the end, you'll understand exactly why that is and how to let go of it without feeling like you're losing yourself. If you grew up feeling like wealth was for other people, if you learned early that you had to work twice as hard to get half as much, if money has a pattern of arriving and then disappearing, there's often a shared identity underneath that no one names, the victim archetype. And I want to be really clear about something before we go further. Being harmed and identifying as a victim are not the same thing. Real harm happens, real injustice happens. Victimhood is what the nervous system learns after those experiences when it decides how the world works and who you are inside it. One of the most overlooked pieces of this archetype is how love gets wired. Somewhere along the way, many people learned that pain brought connection, being overlooked brought attention, struggling brought validation. You weren't rewarded for agency, you were rewarded for enduring. So the system learned if I'm struggling, I'm seen. If I'm suffering, I'm held. If I complain, I'm not alone. That's not manipulation, that's conditioning. Over time, dopamine, the chemical involved in motivation and learning, stops being linked to action and starts being linked to complaint. So, relief comes from retelling the story, from being validated in the pain, from receiving sympathy, from proving that your suffering is real. And without realizing it, the nervous system learns something very specific. I get relief when I focus on what went wrong. So attention drifts toward problem instead of solutions. The body softens more in complaint than in possibility. And when things start to go well, it can feel strangely uncomfortable. It's not that you don't want things to work out, but because your system hasn't learned to associate agency with reward yet. This shows up very clearly in money shame. I'm not worthy of wealth. Wealth is for other people, not for me. I must be missing something everyone else has. There's a quiet victimhood inside that belief. Not dramatic, just resigned. And then there's the hard money wound, the limiting belief that making money is hard, nothing in life is free, I have to bust my ass for everything. If it's easy, it's suspicious. Struggle becomes proof of goodness, ease feels undeserved, rest feels unsafe. And then the disappearing money wound, the limiting belief that money always leaves. No matter what I do, money leaves. I can't hold on to it. It never stays. That one carries a deep sense of helplessness, a feeling that effort doesn't equal outcome, so trust never fully lands. Across all three, the underlying pattern is the same. Life happens to me. Once that belief gets repeated enough, the brain locks onto it. The brain's job isn't to tell the truth, it's to predict. So when life has repeatedly felt unfair, unsafe, or depriving, or when that's how it was interpreted, the brain builds a model of the world. This is how things go. This is what happens to people like me. And then it starts scanning for confirmation. Missed opportunity? Proof. Delayed payment? Proof. Someone else succeeding? Proof. The brain isn't negative, it's efficient. It prefers familiar stories because rewriting identity costs energy. That's why logic rarely breaks victimhood. You're not debating beliefs, you're interrupting an automated self story. There's a part of your brain that loops your sense of self, the quiet background narration of who I am and how life treats me. And when that loop runs things like, this always happens to me, I've never had support, I've never been loved, I'm just unlucky, I don't get chosen, those thoughts stop feeling like thoughts. They feel like hard facts. Blame also plays a role here. Blaming people, systems, timing, or luck can feel relieving in the moment. But every time responsibility gets handed outward, power goes with it. Blame soothes, but it also freezes agency. That's the hidden cost of the victim archetype. Short-term relief in exchange for long-term power. So how do you exit this without forcing positivity or pretending nothing bad happened? You don't argue with the future, you update the past. This is where retrospective identity affirmations come in, because these aren't aspirational statements, they are memory-based identity statements. I've always been loved. I've always had a surplus. I've never gone without. I've always been chosen. I've always had access to what I needed. When you say I've always been loved, the brain doesn't have to fight about what might happen. It simply updates the self model. That does three things. First, it collapses resistance. There's nothing to argue with if the statement is framed as already true. And second, it changes prediction. If the past has always been supportive, the brain predicts continuity, safety, support going forward. So prediction shifts, perception shifts, behavior follows. And third, it removes the payoff of victimhood. If I've always had a surplus is true, there's no neurological reward left in scanning for lack, no dopamine hit in complaint, no comfort in proving deprivation. The loop loses fuel. Victimhood doesn't need to be endlessly healed or analyzed. It survives through memory loops. Identity continuity shuts the loop. Victim mindset isn't a personality flaw, it's a brain trained to predict threat and deprivation. Change the identity narrative, and the brain stops searching for proof of suffering. If you recognize yourself in this, especially around money, looping retrospective affirmations daily is one of the fastest ways to rewire this pattern. Not in a magical way, but because they speak the brain's language. And once the brain learns that agency is safe, relief stops coming from struggle and suffering. It comes from movement. By the way, victimhood doesn't only show up around money. I used money wounds as an example because that's what my whole channel is about, financial trauma and money wounds. So these affirmations are not just for money wounds. You can use them for love, scarcity, relationships, everything. Also, if you want to know what your main money wound is, I've built a free money wound quiz so you can discover how you're subconsciously repelling wealth. Thank you so much for watching, sending you love, and I will see you in a jiffy.